After seeing Jason that day, I disappeared. Not physically, I still existed. I still answered messages occasionally, and I still bought groceries when I had to. I still paid my bills, but for the most part, I disappeared from the world. The university term had ended. Campus had grown quiet, and students were preparing to travel home for the holidays. Holiday plans filled social media. Photographs of Christmas decorations appeared everywhere. People were celebrating. Meanwhile, I spent most of my days in bed. I would wake up and immediately reach for my phone. Not because I had somewhere to be or had anything important to do, simply because it was easier than getting up. I watched a lot of videos. I scrolled endlessly through social media. I read news articles I barely remembered 5 minutes later. Sometimes entire afternoons disappeared without me noticing. I knew it wasn't healthy, but at the time, it felt easier than thinking or feeling. Messages would appear throughout the day. I answered some and ignored most. My parents would ask how I was doing. I always gave the same answer: I'm fine. A lie. Michiko would send messages asking if I wanted to grab lunch, visit a museum, take a walk, or see a movie. I always had an excuse. Busy tying up my projects, trying to finish some reading, working on a few things. Another lie. The truth was that I wasn't doing anything. The term was over and there were no more assignments or deadlines, no urgent responsibilities. I simply didn't have the energy to talk. Even answering messages felt exhausting. Oddly enough, the only messages I consistently read were Jason's, but I never replied. Not once. But every morning there would be a message from Jason. Sometimes it was a prayer, sometimes an inspirational quote. Every evening there would be another. Good night. Hope your day went well. Or thinking about you. The messages confused me. Part of me wanted to block him. Part of me knew I probably should. But another part of me couldn't do it. Not yet. Maybe because I wasn't ready for complete silence. Maybe because those messages reminded me that I still existed somewhere in his thoughts. Maybe because I still needed answers. The truth was, I didn't know. I only knew that I wasn't ready to cut the final thread connecting us. Not before I understood what had happened. Not before I got some form of closure. The problem was that I wasn't ready for closure either. So I remained suspended somewhere in the middle, not moving forward, not moving back, just existing. Days passed, then weeks. The apartment slowly transformed from a home into a hiding place. At first, it felt comforting, safe, and protected, but safety has a dark side. Eventually, it becomes isolation, and isolation has a way of feeding sadness. I noticed it gradually: the heaviness, the lack of motivation, and the constant exhaustion. The feeling that even simple tasks required effort. One morning, I walked into the bathroom and caught sight of myself in the mirror. I stopped. For a moment, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. My hair desperately needed attention. My eyes looked dull, and my skin looked pale. I looked tired. I stared at my reflection for a long time. When was the last time I had dressed up? The last time I had done my hair? The last time I had genuinely cared how I looked? I couldn't remember, and that frightened me. No, no, nope. I said it out loud. No, this isn't good. The woman staring back at me wasn't healing. She was hiding, and there was a difference. And suddenly I knew something had to change. Soon, January would arrive. Classes would begin again. Life would move forward whether I was ready or not. I couldn't spend the rest of winter hiding inside my apartment. I needed fresh air, movement, conversation. I needed to hear voices other than my own. I missed the city. I missed people. I even missed the noise. Christmas was only a few days away. Normally, it was my favorite time of year. The thought surprised me because I had almost forgotten. I stood there staring at my reflection. Then I picked up my phone. Before I could change my mind, I called Michiko. She answered before the first ring finished. Danai! The relief in her voice was immediate. I laughed. Hello to you too. You're alive. Apparently. I'm serious. I know. There was a brief silence. Then she spoke softly. I was worried about you. The honesty in her voice touched me. I swallowed hard. I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize. She paused. I understand. And somehow I knew she did. She had experienced her own heartbreak, her own loneliness, her own dark days. She understood in a way many people couldn't. I'm ready to come out of hiding, I said. Her response was immediate. Good. I laughed. No sympathy? Nope. Thanks a lot. You're welcome. We both laughed. Then she told me about a university Christmas event taking place the following weekend. A Christmas market and dinner with dancing for the university's students and faculty. A celebration before everyone disappeared for the holidays. You should come with me. I didn't even hesitate. Yes, please. You mean that? Michiko sounded surprised. I do. Excellent. For the first time in weeks, I felt a small spark of excitement. After we ended the call, I sat quietly for a moment. Then I looked around my apartment. Maybe it was time. Time to stop hiding, put on something nice, get my hair done, and walk through the city again. Time to remember that I deserved good things too. I had survived one of the hardest experiences of my life, and I was still standing. Maybe that was worth celebrating. And for the first time in a very long time, I found myself looking forward to the weekend. I spent most of the week thinking about something I hadn't thought about in years. Myself. Not my studies, not Jason, not what happened. Me. It sounds strange to say it out loud, but I wasn't entirely sure who I was anymore. Jason and I had met when I was in my early 20s. He had been my first real relationship, the only relationship that truly mattered. For years, our lives became intertwined, enmeshed. My goals, plans, dreams, and future were tied to Jason. Somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing myself as an individual and started seeing myself as half of a partnership. At the time, it felt natural, romantic even. Now I wasn't so sure. Maybe I had built too much of my identity around someone else. Maybe I had become so accustomed to seeing myself through Jason's eyes that I no longer knew how to see myself through my own. The realization was uncomfortable because if Jason no longer wanted me, what did that mean? Did it mean I wasn't attractive or interesting or deserving of love? I hated those thoughts. I knew they weren't fair. But knowing something intellectually and believing it emotionally are very different things. What I did know was this: I needed to do something for myself. Not because of Jason, not because of anyone else, because I deserved it. Which was how I found myself sitting in a salon chair the morning of the university Christmas event. The stylist asked me the usual question. So, what are we doing today? I looked at my reflection, then smiled. Something different. She laughed. How different? Not crazy. She laughed loud. Definitely different, though. The next 2 hours felt equal parts exciting and terrifying. Every few minutes, I questioned my decision. Maybe this was too much. Maybe I should stay with what I knew. Maybe I should stop them halfway through. Instead, I stayed quiet and trusted the process. When it was finally finished, I almost didn't recognize myself. Not because I looked like someone else, because I looked like a version of myself I had forgotten existed. A little bolder, a little more confident, a little less concerned about what everyone else expected. I stared at my reflection. The stylist smiled. "What do you think?" I said, "I honestly don't know." Everyone laughed. The women nearby immediately began offering opinions. Positive opinions. Very positive opinions. "You look gorgeous." "I love it." "That style suits you." "It brightens your face." I laughed and thanked them. Part of me suspected they were simply being kind. Still, hearing the compliments felt nice. As I walked back through the city, I became painfully self conscious. I was convinced everyone was staring at me. Of course, they weren't, or at least most of them weren't. But when you're not accustomed to attention, even normal glances feel significant. By the time I reached my apartment, I couldn't wait to look in the mirror again. I placed my bags down and stood staring at my reflection. Wow, this was really happening. I barely recognized the woman looking back at me. And for once, that wasn't a bad thing. A few hours later, I was standing in front of the mirror again. This time fully dressed, with a new outfit, new hairstyle, and new makeup. A new version of me, at least for tonight. I took a deep breath, grabbed my coat, and headed out. When I arrived at the venue, I spotted Michiko immediately. The moment she saw me, her eyes widened. Her mouth literally fell open. For several seconds, she simply stared. Then she rushed over and hugged me. "Oh my goodness!" I laughed. "What?" "You are beautiful." I immediately looked away. No, no, no. "Yes." "No." "Danai." She stepped back and looked at me. "You are absolutely beautiful." I felt my face warming. "I don't know. Maybe it's too much." Michiko looked horrified. "Too much?" She shook her head dramatically. "It isn't too much, it just suits you." Coming from Michiko, that meant something. She was probably the most fashionable person I knew. If she approved, perhaps I wasn't committing some sort of fashion crime. I relaxed slightly. The evening began. And honestly, it was wonderful. The Christmas market was unlike anything I had ever experienced. This felt almost magical. Strings of lights stretched across walkways. Stalls sold handmade decorations. The scent of roasted chestnuts drifted through the air. I bought my first bag and immediately understood why people loved them. Then came mulled wine, then mince pies, then several other festive treats I couldn't pronounce properly. Everything felt new, exciting, and somehow it felt comforting too. I felt Christmas, the feeling, the atmosphere, and the joy. At one stall, I found several small decorations and immediately decided that I needed a Christmas tree. A small one, nothing extravagant, just enough to bring some life into my apartment. The thought made me smile. Maybe I would create my own Christmas after all. Later, we moved into the dining hall. The tables were beautifully decorated. Music played softly in the background. People chatted and laughed. The room felt warm despite the cold weather outside. Michiko and I ended up sitting with several of her friends. Most were international students, people from different countries, different cultures, different backgrounds. Yet somehow we all shared something, the experience of building a life far from home. Conversation flowed easily. Nobody seemed interested in impressing anyone. Everyone simply wanted to enjoy themselves. A few of the guys at the table made an effort to include me in conversations. I remained polite, friendly, and incredibly shy. I wasn't used to that kind of attention. Part of me still didn't know what to do with it. One person stood out in particular. He wore glasses, had a wonderfully dry sense of humor, and somehow managed to keep the entire table laughing. Several times I laughed so hard that tears formed in my eyes. At one point, I had to put my fork down because I couldn't stop laughing. It felt good, really good. The kind of laughter that reaches deep inside and reminds you that happiness still exists. After dinner, a live band took the stage. They played Christmas classics mixed with popular songs. The atmosphere shifted instantly. People began dancing, singing, and celebrating. The mulled wine certainly helped. I danced, something I rarely did. At one point, the student with the glasses pulled me onto the dance floor. I protested briefly, then joined anyway. The music was too good. The atmosphere was too infectious. For a few hours, nothing mattered except that moment. No heartbreak, no unanswered questions, no complicated past. Just music, friends, laughter, and life as it should be lived. I didn't want the evening to end, but eventually it did. When I finally arrived home, it was almost 3 o'clock in the morning. I kicked off my shoes and collapsed onto my bed. I felt strangely energized, happy and restless. I couldn't stop replaying the evening in my mind. The music, the conversations, the laughter, Michiko, the Christmas market, everything. I knew I should sleep. Tomorrow I planned to buy decorations and food for Christmas, but I also needed to check in with Michiko. Then I remembered my phone. I hadn't checked it all day. When I finally picked it up, there were several messages waiting. Jason had sent his usual morning message and his usual evening message. There was another one from him too, around midnight, probably because he saw that I hadn't read the first two. Then I noticed a message from Michiko. Got home safely? A second message followed. Would you mind if I gave Tiago your number? I stared and messaged back. Tiago? Her response came immediately. The guy with the glasses who kept making everyone laugh. Yes, I remembered him, particularly the jokes and the dancing. He asked if he could have your number. I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed, "Let me think about it. I'll call you tomorrow, okay?" She replied, "Sure, take your time. Talk tomorrow and sleep well." Apparently, I fell asleep immediately afterward, because when I woke up the next day, it was almost noon. The first thing I did was check my phone. Jason had already sent a message around 8 that morning. A prayer and a wish for a good day. The usual. I didn't open it. Instead, I messaged Michiko. Hope you slept well. Have you made plans for Christmas yet? Her reply arrived about 2 hours later. Sorry, just woke up. No, not really. Have you? I smiled, then typed, No, but if you'd like, you can come over for the holidays. Stay as long as you want. I'll cook. Her response was immediate. That sounds amazing. I'll bring drinks and snacks. I will bring some movies too. A few seconds later, another message appeared. So, have you thought about Tiago? I stared at the screen. For reasons I couldn't explain, I felt nervous. After a long pause, I finally typed, Sure, I guess that's okay. 3 dots appeared instantly. Then, great, he'll be relieved. I laughed, set my phone aside. Relieved? And for the first time in a very long time, I found myself wondering what might happen next.